Hello there, I'm a day late reviewing 1971's THX 1138. THX 1138 is George Lucas's first movie after he graduated from film school at the University of Southern California. It is a feature-length retelling of a short film he made while attending the film school called Electronic Labyrinth THX 1138 4EB. In that story, humans have moved into an underground city for an unexplained reason, and one man breaks convention and flees the city. It shows a surveillance state with people watching monitors and a lot of off-screen voices/radio chatter, detailing the escape. At 15 minutes in length, there isn't much time for character development or much of a plot. But it was a student film, so obviously limited resources there. But after he graduated from film school and founded the film company American Zoetrope with Francis Ford Coppola, Warner Brothers came a-knockin' and signed a deal with American Zoetrope to co-produce several movies. Now, having some funding, Lucas decided to expand the story a little bit, and so we got THX 1138. In the commentary on the DVD, Lucas had said that he had wanted to make an art house film, one where the viewer goes through the many feelings of the protagonist, and in this respect, he delivers. It is absolutely an art house movie, and that means it's probably not going to appeal to a wide audience. So from my experience at watching the movie, I can say that it's heavy on concept and experimentation, and light on explanation. As Lucas explained in the commentary on the DVD, that is intentional. He wants you to feel the same confusion our hero does. What Lucas probably didn't count on was that long periods of confusion with lack of answers, at least in my case, led to boredom and aggravation. And quite frankly, I'm not too sure that it's all heavy on concept either. Yeah, it's your basic man against the system storyline, but it doesn't show a system that's all that oppressive. It's more Brave New World than 1984. And by that I mean society is kept docile and compliant through drugs rather than fear, intimidation, and violence. The film opens with the trailer for an episode of the film serial Buck Rogers from the late 1930s. I'd never have guessed why Lucas put it in the film. Lucas says in the DVD commentary that he wanted to draw a parallel between Rogers and his character THX 1138 as two ordinary people who move away from the status quo. They are introduced to a new environment/situation and rise to the occasion. Then we get the opening credits, and following those, we see an old-style TV image as if there were a camera at the back of a medicine cabinet in a bathroom. An off-screen voice asks the person who's opened the cabinet, "What's wrong?" The person says he's okay, that he feels like he needed something a little stronger. Then we get to see some random teletype prints go by. Then we see another person open their medicine cabinet, and the voice again asks, "What's wrong?" This person says, "Never mind," and closes the cabinet. Then we see a wave pattern from an oscilloscope maybe. These disparate images are intentional, as Lucas wanted to make the audience feel the main character's unease. The images also hint at a future setting. Then we see people working at a factory making robots. They do this remotely using robotic arms, as the power source for the robots is radioactive. I'll give it to Lucas. I think the director's cut with the enhanced graphics by ILM have made it look more futuristic than the original theatrical release. Of course, he had more tools and money available in 2004 than he did in 1969. Now, intercut with THX working on building a robot, we are introduced to two of the other main characters, LUH 3417 and SEN 5241. They're in a room with banks of TV monitors that I'm going to refer to as an observation center, because here they are watching various camera feeds of people throughout the city. Through off-screen dialogue, we learn that all people must take drugs to help maintain an obedient and peaceful society. Love and sex have been outlawed and is viewed as a deviant behavior.
No way.
We later find out, as the story progresses, that most births are from test tube babies grown in a lab setting. Looking at the medicine cabinet monitors on the screen, LUH sees a child and her face brightens a bit. An alarm sounds and monitors switch to the robot manufacturing plant where there's an explosion killing many people. You can see that LUH is distressed by this, and she glances over at SEN and tries to hide her distress. As it turns out, it was a different section of the factory than the one that THX works at, and he is okay. His shift ends, and we see him walking through long, mostly empty hallways until he gets to a shopping mall. He goes into a store and he picks out a red plastic block, and then he leaves. On the way home, he stops at a booth that acts like a robot priest confessional/therapist. THX says that his roommate has been behaving oddly, and that he himself has been feeling out of sorts lately. The robotherapist assures THX that he is a good and productive member of society and encourages him to continue to be a hard worker and to be safe. When he finally makes it home, he puts the plastic block on a table and takes what I guess to be a sonic shower. He then returns to his room and places the plastic block into a pneumatic chamber, and the block is whisked away to who knows where. I had no idea what the point of that was, so I turn on the commentary by Lucas. It turns out this was his observation about rampant consumerism. People buying things they don't use or need just because they are addicted to buying things. So, okay then.
Well, at least that wasn't weird.
Buy only what you need and nothing else. Got it. I guess Lucas is unaware that most knickknacks and tchotchkes that people buy, while little more than decorative, do bring some small joy to their lives. It seems odd to have this scene since the populace in the movie is all drugged to be docile and emotionally flat, so I don't see why they would buy such items. Now we find out that THX's roommate is LUH. She calls his name and he leaves his room and he goes to the common room. She peeks her head out of her room and then she retreats back to the medicine cabinet. When she opens it, we hear an off-screen voice say that natural-borns can only have so much of a certain drug per day, and substituting it with another drug may cause a serious chemical imbalance. We then cut to an observation center. Someone's watching LUH open her cabinet. A screen appears that says that she may have committed a drug violation. LUH closes the cabinet and then goes to the kitchen where she switches one of THX's meds with another on his food tray. Meanwhile, THX is watching a naked dancer on the holoscreen and indulging in a little Suck-O-Matic 2000 time. Once he's done, he flips over to the channel where a Robocop is beating someone with a truncheon. LUH comes to the door and THX switches to the news. LUH takes a seat next to THX and tells him that he ought to eat. As he goes to get his meal tray, LUH changes the channel to a comedy show. THX returns with his tray and asks why LUH changed the channel. She says that he has seen enough already. He replies that she knows that he hasn't been feeling well. She then tells THX to take his sedation pill. It turns out to be the one that she changed. Later we cut to THX in a booth talking with the robo-priest again. He says that he thinks LUH is doing something to him, that he feels like he's dying. He then vomits into the corner of the booth. The robo-priest tells THX that he's a true believer and has the blessings of the state. It then tells him to go out and buy something. Because remember, consumerism bad. THX then returns home. He opens his medicine cabinet and then passes out as it asks him what is wrong. LUH comes into the room and says never mind and closes the cabinet. We then see SEN watching from an observation room. LUH then drags THX to his bed and then takes his limp hand and strokes her cheek with it. Some time passes and we see THX and LUH sitting face to face holding each other's heads in their hands, being very affectionate with one another. LUH admits that she wanted THX for a while now. He says he was happy. Why did she involve him in this? She has no answer for him, and then he kisses her. Then, it's sexy time. Sometime later, we find THX and LUH in the common room. LUH says that if THX goes back on the sedation medication, he won't feel the same way about her and will likely report her for being off her meds as well. THX says he has to. He is scheduled to go back to work and has to perform some delicate assembly tasks, and he can't do that without the medication. LUH says they could run. They could live in the superstructure, whatever that is. They nuzzle a bit, and THX says that it's going to be alright. A bit later, they are walking in a busy corridor, and LUH shows THX a note she received saying that her shift has been rescheduled and she needs to go see SEN at his apartment. THX doesn't want her to go. It's unusual to get schedule changes from your supervisor instead of the scheduling department. It's more unusual to be called to his apartment. LUH doesn't want to rock the boat and draw any unwanted attention to themselves and says that she will go. Later still, THX goes to SEN's apartment and finds several people moving out his former roommate's stuff. The roommate was destroyed for some reason. THX wants to know why SEN had LUH come by. SEN says that he wants THX as a roommate and that he discussed it with LUH. SEN says that he has seen THX's file and that he rates very highly on cleanliness, and that they would be good roommates together. This is all very unusual, as roommates are selected by computer for compatibility. THX is very disturbed by this and tells SEN that he is in violation. SEN says that everything is okay and that they will be happy together. THX says he doesn't feel well and he leaves. THX goes home and listens to the news while waiting for LUH to arrive. But she doesn't. The next day, THX is getting ready to start a shift when SEN comes in. THX is very agitated by this. He tells SEN that he doesn't have the proper authorization to be in there. SEN says he's good with computers and he's given himself clearance to be almost anywhere he wants to go. SEN then says that he's had LUH reassigned to another sector and that THX is going to need a new roommate. THX leaves, but before he starts work, he stops to fill out a report saying that SEN is in violation for changing LUH's shift. THX then joins his shift. He's doing okay, but he drops a radioactive item that he needs to insert into the robot. He picks it back up and inserts it this time. All the while he's being monitored by an observation center. They've noticed that his respiration rate is elevated and so are his adrenal levels. They also notice that his sedation levels are low and order him to be mind-locked and arrested. But then another observer says that just before the shift started, THX reported SEN to be in violation. A counterman order on the mind lock is given, but for some reason one of the observers disregards the order and initiates the mind lock anyways, freezing THX in place during a very delicate procedure. THX's robot arm drops the radioactive rod and it starts to melt through the robot. Everyone else is evacuated while the counterman order is given more vigorously. The mind lock is stopped and THX retrieves the rod. Off-screen we hear a voice ask, "Who authorized the mind lock?" and the person who did it says it wasn't her fault.
What?
Even though he saved the day, THX is frog-marched out of the factory by a couple of Robocops. There's a brief trial in which THX is found guilty of being in violation for a lack of drug use and of being a pervert that has sex with other people. He is pronounced as incurable and is to be held in detention and reconditioned.
Bogus.
THX is taken to a giant empty white room. Here, a group of 3 Robocops have THX run in circles for a bit as they zap him with their stun rods. He eventually falls to the ground and they zap him here and there a few more times for good measure, and then they finally leave. Next up we see him in a room getting a CT scan. After that they check his brain functions and run a number of other tests on him as well. We then see a screen saying that THX has a chemical imbalance, but that most of his organs except for the left kidney are reusable. He is then taken back to the white room. A bit later we are watching the monitors again, this time of THX in the white room. We hear 2 off-screen voices talking about the equipment that they are using to observe THX. One of the voices says that he's only used the Mark 7 and not the Mark 8, but the setup looks similar to the Mark 7. They then start pushing buttons to get the picture to zoom in. Meanwhile, THX starts flopping about. It's never directly said by either voice whether THX's responses are leaked to what they are doing. But in the commentary, Walter Murch, the co-writer of the movie, says that yes indeed, that is the case. I half thought so, but wasn't sure, as later in the movie when THX is on the run, no one takes control of his body with these machines to stop him so that he can be rearrested. A bit later, THX sees someone in the distance of the white room. It's LUH.
Excellent.
She runs up to him and they embrace, holding each other tight, and THX asks if she is okay. She tells him that she is pregnant. In celebration of this news, they decide on Sexy Time Part 2. They fall asleep in each other's arms, only to be awakened by the arrival of 2 Robocops and a man in yellow. THX isn't interested in going with the police, but he is zapped by one of their stun sticks and then carried off, never to see LUH again.
Bogus.
THX is brought to another area in the white room. This area has several places to sit or lie down, and multiple other people as well, one of whom is SEN. None of the others seem to have much of a grasp on reality. As time passes, the police bring in new crazes to join the group or remove violent ones. After an unknown amount of time, THX loses his cool and overturns one of the beds and throws his food in the air. He's had enough and he's leaving. He starts walking off in one direction, and SEN decides to tag along with him. After another unknown period of time, they come across another person. The new person says that he used to be lost, but he isn't now. They ask him if he knows the way out, and he says yes. They follow him to a flashing black light and come to a door. They go through the door and are inundated by a rush of people. SEN is separated from the others in the crush of bodies. THX and the new guy duck into a room to get out of the flood of people. Here they see jars and jars of fetuses. THX asks the new guy who he is. The new guy replies that he's a hologram come to life, that he used to work in one of the holo programs. Meanwhile, SEN gets on a subway and he rides it to the end of the line. He gets out of the train and he starts walking down the tunnel of the bit. He makes it to the end of the track and it's kind of spooky there, and he decides to turn back. He then hustles back to the train before it leaves. We then cut back to THX and the new guy trying to give the police a slip in a room filled with racks of equipment. They weave in and out of the rows, avoiding the police. Intercut with this are scenes of control rooms with off-screen dialogue discussing how much it will cost to find and return THX. THX and the new guy give the cops the slip and make their way into a morgue. They hear someone coming and lay down on two of the tables. The person starts clipping tags on the ears of the dead. When she clips THX's ear, he yells and jumps off the table, and he and the new guy then flee. SEN makes his way into a TV studio. Here he finds a large poster of the priest figure in all of the confessional booths. SEN starts praying to the poster, saying he doesn't like being out of society and he wants to return. A priest shows up and wants to know what SEN is doing there. He asks for SEN's ID badge, and not finding it, says that Sin is in violation and will be reported. Sin pushes the priest backwards and the priest falls down and is knocked out. THX and the new guy are running from the police when they make their way into an unoccupied observation room. Once inside, THX tries to find LUH. He enters the question into a computer, and an image comes up on one of the monitors. It is of a fetus in a jar with a designation of LUH 3417. The computer says that the name has been reassigned to this fetus. THX doesn't want to accept it and thinks about it for a while.
That's not true. That's impossible.
Meanwhile, two Robocops are trying to get into the room. SEN has made his way to another subway terminal. He is sitting watching kids play games when one of them comes up to him. The child's inducer has fallen off. SEN helps put it back on the child, and then he starts telling him about what it was like when he was a child. We then cut to an observation center, and SEN is on the monitors. One of the observers notifies the police to head to that area to arrest SEN. THX and the new guy open the door to the observation center they are in, and the Robocops fall into the room. THX and the new guy jump over them and run down the hallway. They make their way to a parking garage and jump into a pair of cars. THX is able to start his car and he takes off. The new guy is stuck fiddling with knobs and buttons. He finally gets the car started and immediately runs it into a support column. Two Robocops show up on the scene of the accident, but the new guy is nowhere to be found. We then see a pair of Robocops approach SEN and peacefully take him into custody, as the children take an escalator up to another level with glazed expressions on their faces. Then we're back to a CGI scene of THX weaving around cars until he leaves the main thoroughfare. Now he's the lone car in a long tunnel. Two Robocops are distantly behind him on motorcycles. Cut to an observation center watching a radar-like readout of the motorcycles closing in on THX. Back to THX as his car overheats and he's forced to stop. The motorcycles are getting closer. After a bit, the car is cooled enough to restart the engine. THX is flying down the straightaway and hits several plastic pylons, sending them flying. Shortly thereafter, one of the motorcycles crashes as it hits the debris. Now there's only one Robocop chasing him. THX comes to an area where a repair crew is working on the tunnel. He crashes into the scaffolding and comes to a halt. Just behind him is the remaining motorcycle, which promptly crashes as it hits some of the scattered scaffolding. A monitor back in the observation center shows the Robocop destroyed. THX takes off running into a side tunnel. Another motorcycle, this one with a sidecar, arrives on scene. The pair of officers follow after THX. THX makes his way through the shell, which looks like a parking garage, and he is jumped by a monkey creature. THX spins around trying to get the animal off and eventually falls to the ground. THX rolls over, gets up, and starts running as the other monkeys move in to check on their injured comrade. THX makes it to a shaft heading up and starts climbing. The pair of Robocops are on the ladder behind him, calling for him to come back. They just want to help him. We cut back to the observation center, and the budget has now been exceeded. They order the Robocops to give up pursuit. The Robocops call out one last time, telling THX that they have to stop, and if he goes on, they can't help him. THX keeps going. He eventually reaches the top and stands before a setting sun. Cut to credits, the end. So there you have it, George Lucas's take on a dystopian future. It has some elements of both Brave New World and 1984, but there is new stuff from Lucas and co-writer Walter Murch. It is said in the DVD commentary that they wanted to make the movie feel like a slice of the future. So, that is why if you listen to the off-screen voices, they don't always make much sense, as they are talking in this future speak / technical jargon. Heck, at the trial of THX, thanks to the shortened jargon, I can't tell you why they decided to let THX live. They pronounced him incurable, but then they didn't have him destroyed? And yet, as we find out later, they destroyed LUH. Why? Now, both of those results would have made sense if it was argued that LUH had messed with THX's meds, and prior to that, he was a model citizen. That LUH was naturally resistant or immune to the meds, and that's why she was destroyed. But THX? All he needs is some supervision with his meds until his drug levels have returned to the required levels, and everything will be fine. But I didn't get that from the gibberish arguments made. It was mostly an incoherent mess, and like I said, I still don't know why they let THX live. Also, I can't tell you why THX decides to run. Is it LUH's destruction? Is it his rejection of the empty lives that they are living? Working long hours at the Robocop factory just so you can buy a red plastic cube that you throw away once you get home? THX makes no speeches about how terrible the society is, or how wonderful the love of another person is, the ability to feel warmth and affection, happiness and joy, that these are things that he wants to continue to do. Nope. The movie is cold and sterile, like the society it depicts. It lacks drama, either emotional or physical. Here's the best action you'll see.
63410, wait for 32. Nine. 3437.
Riveting stuff. I understand, it's first movie, 1969, budget just under $800,000, and let's face it, fight choreography from that era wasn't the best. But come on, just for comparison, Dirty Harry came out in 1971 as well. You have physical action.
Now.
And you have drama.
The girl, where is she?
You tried to kill me!
If I tried that, your head would be splattered all over this field. Where's the girl?
I want a lawyer.
I said, where's the girl?
I have the right for a lawyer.
Where's the girl?
I have the right for a lawyer. Done to me. I have rights for a lawyer.
I will grant you that Dirty Harry has 5 times the budget, and it certainly shows if you've seen the movie. There are a number of big action set pieces that cost a pretty penny. But other than the helicopter shot as we pull away from Harry standing on Scorpio's leg, and rending the football stadium, there isn't much about these scenes that scream big money. Scorpio could have been in some back alleyway somewhere as Harry mashes on his leg, and then we cut to the next scene. It might not look as cool, but the drama would still be there. And for the big car chase at the end, Lucas uses real cars, and they travel at high rates of speed, but they pretty much drive along in straightaways, and the motorcycles aren't even in the same scene. We cut back and forth between THX's car and the pursuing motorcycles. There is a little tension in the scenes, but that's the problem. It's only a little. Now, there are two versions of the movie out there. There's the original theatrical cut, which is on the internet and on VHS, if you can find a VHS player. The DVD and Blu-ray versions are the updated director's cut and have CGI overlays to make the city busier and more impressive. CGI was also used to make the explosion at the factory more exciting, and they added a CGI car weaving about in traffic briefly to once again bring a little more thrills to the film. If you're going to watch, I would certainly recommend the director's cut over the original theatrical version. It was writer-director George Lucas's first movie. As most know, he would go on to bigger and better things. I think Lucas did a good job as director. He got good performances out of the actors, and I like many of the shot choices for cinematography. The screenplay was co-written by Walter Murch. His career in Hollywood has mostly been working in the sound department, but he does have 5 writing credits. The movie stars Robert Duvall, Donald Pleasance, and Maggie McOmie, all of whom do a fine job. It cost $777,000 to make, and it took in $2.4 million, so it turned a profit. It has a 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Metacritic has it at 75 out of 100, and Rotten Tomatoes has it at 86% per critics and 73% per audience, so it was a hit with critics. I found it dull and lacking in tension or drama. As far as dystopian movies go, there's much better fare out there. Well, thanks for watching, and until next time.